Hello, fine folks, and welcome to Booghy Plays. I'm not playing tonight, I'm playing like the usual with questions tonight. I forgot to do something and now I have to do it. This, and this. Oh, no. Live stuff. No. Here. Yeah, we're okay. Like I said, tonight I'm playing with questions, and my guest tonight is a designer, a developer, a publisher. He does a lot of things, and he published and designed his first game, which is Magnate, a game which I really enjoyed. And I said, let's talk a bit with a first-time designer, which is who is a first-time publisher, and then he tries to go from, and where he tries to go from here. So tonight my guest is going to be James Naylor. Hello, James, and welcome to Booghy Plays.
Hello.
How are you feeling? How are things tonight?
Very good, thank you very much. Yes, very good, thank you. Had another very long but productive day, so feeling really good.
Well, having long days is not that bad if they're productive. Like I said, I have played the Magnate. You have sent me a review copy for it, and we had a lot of fun. And I said, well, yeah, you came into this hobby straight with a very good game. So now I'm very curious what comes, what will you do from now on. But until we get there, and until we talk about games, I will start this interview with a small part, which is, most of it is about you, but it is about your childhood. So
Wow.
the first part is, where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in a place called Red Hill, which is just to the south of London, and I grew up in a little place called Coulsdon, which is there, and not too far from there. And yeah, and I basically lived there for until I was about 18. Then I went to university. Parents moved away to Somerset, and then I came back to London to Croydon, which is where I live now.
I see. How was it? How is it growing up in a London is a huge city, is a metropolis. How is it growing up in near London? How was it?
It was very nice. I enjoyed where I grew up in Coulsdon. It's a very kind of pretty normal suburban kind of place. It was very nice, and it was yeah, a place that I enjoyed growing up. I think thing about London, which is that because it's like the center of the UK's politics and business and other things like this, means that in reality, you kind of come to have a very even more London centric view of everything. I think living there, that I think is a big thing, which I know people who live outside London feel very strongly. And so you just get used to the fact that all of the amazing things that London offers are on your doorstep. So whether that be the theatre or that be sort of museums and those sort of things, and it's very normal to do that. And of course, what it also means is that it's normal, for example, not to drive here because it's one of the few places in the country where the public transport is so good you can kind of get around wherever you go.
Oh,
So that's certainly something that yeah, has definitely informed my experience.
you are the only child. Uh,
Yes, very much an
you
only child.
so everything was for you. You didn't have to share anything.
No sharing for me. No, I was just doing all the Lego I had to myself. A lot of Lego as a child. Loved that. In fact, the first Magnate prototype, it was actually all made of Lego buildings, which was delightful as a building material to use for it.
Um, uh, what were your parents' professions?
So my dad was a police officer, and then mum was a librarian.
Okay, and in what did you enjoy when you were a child? What did you in school? What did you enjoy?
So for me, I was always been very interested in lots of different things. Always very interested in all sorts of different subjects, humanities, sciences. Was never that big on maths, I would say broadly. Although I do like mental arithmetic, even though I'm not so keen on the sort of more complicated maths. Yeah, so all sorts of subjects. I mean, for me, I was did a very unusual set of A levels. For example, I did a combination of um, uh, sort of theology and religion, classical civilization, English, and physics.
That's quite interesting. Childhood shapes up a person, be it traumas or good things in in a childhood life. It shapes the adult which will come later. How did the childhood there where you grew up shaped you? How was it for you?
Uh, pretty great, to be honest. I think I had a very good childhood. My parents, we got on really well. I think there's something that happens if you're an only child. There's a sort of quite common thing where um you have a more peer relationship with your parents. It's quite common, I think. So I don't think it was. I think people often with siblings tend to have more of a kind of adversarial relationship because it's like there's the parents and the kids, which isn't really the case, I think, often for only children. So as a result, I think a lot of only children end up like little adults much earlier, and I think that was very much me.
I see. And did you start playing games when you were a child? Did you play games? Not
Yeah,
necessarily board games,
yeah, I love
games in general. Did you?
games of all kinds, games of all kinds. I love board games even as a child. So as well as playing all the classics like Cluedo, Monopoly, that kind of thing. I played some more unusual stuff as well. So there was a really great game I remember I enjoyed called Battle Masters, which was a kind of MB game that was made using Games Workshop miniatures.
I
Um,
see.
and it was and I also ended up collecting a lot of Warhammer as a teenager as well. But the game that is quite surprising that I got into when I was quite young because my dad was really into it because he was a real history buff. Was a game that's just been republished called Kingmaker,
I
um,
see.
which is a 1970s game about the Wars of the Roses and is ludicrously complex. So for when I was like 6 years old, probably a little bit beyond me, but nonetheless, we had a great time playing it.
So your parents are culprits for getting you into the board game scene.
Very much so. Yeah, my parents are very much culprits, I think is a great word to describe it. Very much interested in that. And I also designed board games as well from quite a young age as well. So I was always trying to make up board games and different things from about 8 or 9 years old. So as a result, yeah, I was kind of born to it to some extent. I think for a long time, like many people, when I was a teenager, I just played lots of more video games rather than board games. But I think obviously naturally what happens over time is that you go away and you do that. But I think certainly from my generation, I feel like at least as well, I then discovered later back at university
Yeah,
board
we'll
games
get there.
again.
We'll get there. You at some point you have to mature yourself.
Mm,
So
mm,
get past video games.
yeah.
Uh, but we're gonna get there. I'm not letting you speed up. So you say practically you discovered board games in childhood.
Mm.
Also, as you said, did you play a lot in your family played a lot of games? Did you have game nights with your family? Was this a thing
Not
or?
not not really. Not I wouldn't say really like game nights exactly. I think we just happened to play quite a bit. We would often play things obviously classically at Christmas, but other times of the year we'd just play board games around and like, I just suggest playing Monopoly or playing Kingmaker or something, and then we would just do that. So I can't remember it being a kind of regular scheduled thing.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, in the end, I found this with in Romania. This is not that common for parents to play with their children, or was not, at least for my generation. Usually parents were playing with other parents. This was a social thing for parents to play with parents, and
Mm.
kids were sitting around the table. And I'm always curious to see how it is in different countries with different
Mm.
um, different people, and it is different for every let's say countries. Every country has a bit of different history with board games.
Mm.
Um, So when did you discover, and you started to talk a bit about this, when did you start discovering modern board games, and when did you started to become a true board gamer?
So I think that that's very much like, as I said, that's very much university that I started getting into board games in general, or in modern board games. I had a friend who had sort of got really into some more modern stuff at the time. I think it was like Carcassonne, Ticket to Ride, those kind of classic gateway games, as we think of them now, I guess. And he was really into them, and he was going regularly to the board games shop in Oxford. Oxford had this amazing board game shop.
Where did you study, and what did you study? Sorry, if,
Yeah.
sorry.
So, well, I was studying. I was studying at the University of Oxford, studying philosophy and theology was what I did as my
Uh-huh.
undergraduate degree,
Okay.
and it was brilliant. I had a wonderful time there, and there was this little shop just outside the town centre, which is a board game store run by this lovely old couple called Gameskeeper. And he'd bought a couple of games from here, and he was going to get really into them. And we'd go around his place, and we'd play them. And then he decided yeah, we just got kind of more into games. He wanted to bring me one down the board game shop, and I walked into the board game shop. I looked around, and on the shelf, calling to me, was Railroad Tycoon, which the Martin Wallace game, now
Yeah,
known as Rose of
which
the World.
became Rails of the World. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. In 2000, this is when it was for the first published as this in 2007. And I just
Yeah.
thought, oh, as someone who loved Transport Tycoon, the video game, I was like, right, well, I have to have this. I have to have this game. So I purchased it, and right off the shelf, wasn't sure if I'd like it or not. Took it home, played it, and I loved it. And from that point onwards, I was hooked.
And so practically your most people start with what you say, Carcassonne
Yeah,
or Catan, or yeah,
yeah,
things like these mainstream stuff.
yeah.
So you started with Rails of the World.
Yeah, completely. That's the first board game I purchased, modern board game I purchased, and I was just hooked on it. I thought that the fascinating decision making in it, the spatial qualities of it, yeah, it was brilliant. Like really, really brilliant. And I think, yeah, I love that game. And I still today, it's one of my favorites still, even now.
Yep, yep, mine too. It's in my top 50 of all time, and will stay there probably for a long, long time.
Yeah,
Um,
excellent.
and when well, you were a board gamer, you loved probably playing games. What made you think I want to do more? I want to be a designer.
I think most
And you
thing.
touched, sorry,
Mm,
and you touched a bit on it since you were a child. You were trying to be a
mm.
designer, but when did you really think, I think I want to do this?
So I think most things I have been interested in, I've also been naturally drawn to create in those fields, whether that be writing or filmmaking, for example, was something I was really into for quite a while. And then ultimately I decided that, yeah, it just felt natural once I had played quite a lot of games to want to make them, I think, on a very simple level.
And did you take it seriously? I can do this. What told you I can do this?
Well, I just tried it. I mean, I think for me, I came up with loads of different game ideas. I came up with loads of different design concepts at university. I made a few games. In fact, one of the first games I made was a game called what was it called now? Look at the title. It's the Quest for Captain Brickbeard's Treasure, and it was a game made of Lego pieces completely. Well, no, the board wasn't, but the players were Lego pieces, and I thought it'd be interesting to have rules built around what they could hold. So the different items that you had that were standardized Lego, like swords and cutlasses and blunderbusses and that kind of thing. And thought, well, what if your inventory limit was what your character could hold, and going around an island looking for buried treasure. And because this was very new to this, I was mixing all kinds of crazy mechanics. I had a real working cannon that you could use to shoot down your enemies. So if you got to the cannon, you could try to take them out by shooting the enemies with a working cannon. And I played this game quite a bit with different people at university, and it wasn't. I'm sure it wasn't a great game in many ways, as we would say it today, but it was at least quite madcap and quite entertaining. I also made another game that was I just partly because I like long titles. This one was the Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, the
Robert
board
Ford,
game.
okay.
which
It
was
was based on the film,
yes,
which is an amazing film, by the way.
yeah, it's a great film, and I
Should,
think
yeah,
I was
people should watch it.
exactly. I was very inspired by it, so I thought, well, let's have a go at this kind of slightly mad idea. So yeah, it was brilliant, and it was great fun making all these different games. And then after having made a few of them, I sort of learned how to do it that way by just making stupid prototypes. I was not expecting on any level to publish any of those games. I mean, they were just like. I've still got actually on my shelves. I've still got Brickbeard. So I'd like to. Hasn't now been played in probably more than 10 years. So I'd like to get it out again to see what that's like.
How many until you got to Magnate? Because Magnate is your first game practically. It's your first
Yes.
published game. Until you got to Magnate, how many designs did you shelve?
It's got to be about, well, if you count all the games that I've made, including RPG systems and other stuff, probably about 7 or 8, I would say.
So, what you went from? You designed Magnate. Out of of course, everything is out of my out of my curiosity.
Mm.
But how many? How did you think? So, did you think this is going to be a hit? I'm going to be able to publish it. I'm going to go to the Kickstarter through the Kickstarter system, or I mean, I am going to go through a normal retail distribution, or
Mm.
I'm going to go to a company. How did you approach this
So,
publishing
well,
idea?
so getting Magnate made first was really, I would say, a kind of bucket list item for me. So I wanted to get it published, whatever the case would be. And I started at the end of 2017 exploring this thing from the the current prototype was at that point. And I emailed a couple of publishers and said, hey, can I send a picture of the game to them? And got a couple of responses, which now are exactly the kind of responses I would expect to get. And I thought it was very nice that someone even replied to me, to be honest, because there are so many inundated now. And I think you've got to remember it's even 5 years ago. I think the situation has changed very much. And in terms of how easy it is to get a game published, there's now so many more people into game design, which is great on many levels, but it's now even more competitive, I think, even compared to then. And I sort of thought, I got after these couple of emails, I was like, you know what? I'm not sure this is even the right route for me to take, because maybe compared to quite a lot of people, I actually had quite a lot of relevant professional experience. So I'd worked for a couple of different marketing companies. My primary role there in this place was a product manager, bringing together quite complex projects and packaging up products for a market. I'd done a lot of things in marketing or in product management, and I thought, well, I'm probably on average better positioned than most people are to do this. So I thought, well, in that case, then maybe I can just self-publish it, and we'll see how it goes. I ended up kind of getting in contact again with a friend from school who owns a factory in Birmingham, and that actually makes games, but specifically more like miniatures, really, primarily for various companies. And he played it and he was so enjoyed it. He said, look, I want to help you publish this. Can we work together? So he became a minority shareholder in my company. And then since then, he's been my business partner, helping me get Magnate to market, basically. So that was then, and that was February, March 2018, I think, that we began that journey. And then after that, I thought, well, let's do this. And I did all the classic reading, read all of Jamie Stegmaier's blog posts about how to do this, about how to go about self-publishing. And Kickstarter just looked like the obvious option because, you get the money.
Self-publishing,
Yeah,
practically.
yeah.
It's Kickstarter or GameFound or something
Yeah,
else.
exactly.
Who cares?
So
Self-publishing, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Because Kickstarter, you get the money up front, you can therefore manufacture it. If the thing fails, that tells you either you didn't do your marketing right, or actually maybe people don't want your product. So it's a much lower risk thing than it is to go straight to something like retail, for example, where you have no idea about what the real demand for your product is. So I said about that journey, and we just started then the road to the Magnate Kickstarter. And in the end, it took us. Well, I deliberately took at least, my plan was always to take about a year of build up because I needed to learn so much and spend a lot of time marketing it. And in the end, I think it was more like 18 months because it was November 2019 that it went on Kickstarter.
In the end, self-publishing was you found self-publishing more with your in tuned with your needs than going in a class to a publisher who would or not um,
Yeah.
publish your game.
Well, I was quite looking forward to the process of self-publishing, and actually, I sort of discovered at the end of it that I really did like it. I mean, because I think the issue is that lots of people who go into it, the reason they end up self-publishing is because they can't get their game made, or they really want to get their game made, but actually they don't love the business side and the publishing side of it. But actually, for me, I'd always wanted to run my own business anyway, so it was really straightforward for me in that sense. That it was like, oh, this is just entertaining, and I wasn't sure, to be honest, until we were well into 2020 that I wanted to keep doing this. And then I sort of discovered it was sort of in 2019. I sort of thought, yeah, I quite enjoy this whole process. And in 2020, I very much felt like, oh yeah, actually, I think we've got a knack for this, and it's something I think I could do more of. Um, yeah, so I think that's why for me it was probably the right choice. But I actually think it's probably not the right choice for probably the majority of game designers, because most people, I
Do
don't.
not know how to approach publishing and to do marketing. I think marketing is the most important
Oh,
thing.
it's so critical that the what game publishing really is, to be honest. There's a product part which is about how do you craft a good product, which by the way doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as a good game. There are some
Yeah,
products that have
yeah,
been super successful that are
yeah,
not brilliant games, and then there are
yeah.
lots of
That's
great games that have been quite poor products that just haven't succeeded. The second part is then marketing, which is that how do you reach an audience, and that's kind of tied up with product. And then the last part is, I guess it's the third last part of it, is actually about finance, and that's about how do you make sure the product is profitable, how do you make sure that you've controlled your costs properly, you've done all these sort of things. And to be blunt, like most game designers, they're not actually interested in most of that. So it's quite a poor choice. They want to do like the game design part of the product bit. And maybe some of the other product stuff as well. Sometimes you've got game designers who are also artists. That's super helpful, especially for a really small, scrappy startup company. But that's kind of where I think a lot of people's lack of limits are. And I think doing the whole process proved to me how important publishers still are, and how like the this whole idea of this was a bit sold to some people on like, oh, everyone's gonna be self-publishing on Kickstarter, and that will just be the way things are. It's like, no, I was coming into this as someone who'd had at least quite a lot of relevant experience, and I was still so aware that I was learning so much about how this industry worked. And I had, every year that, every year that would go by, I'd be like, oh my God, compared to where I was a year ago, I knew nothing. I'd keep thinking that over and over again. And I think it made me realize, like, whoa, like I think it is it is really quite a thing to undertake. And I think people who aren't ready for that
yeah,
side of it just shouldn't do it, and should know that that's what it's going to be like. And again, if people want to do that thing, if they're interested in marketing and product and finance, then actually I think it can be a great choice being a publisher and producing it yourself. But you've got to love that bit equally. And this is the thing for me. I think I'm a bit unusual maybe in some ways, because I'm genuinely 50-50 on the business side and the game design side. So I am just as interested in business as I am in board games. And for that reason, I think that puts me in a good place to be a publisher, I think.
so during this process of publishing it, did you were the designer, were you also the developer of the game?
So actually, really fortunately, in end of like late 2018, I met a guy called Jaya, who was an actor who was obsessed with board games. Really, I mean, he's maybe the person I know of anyone who's also the best person at board games I know. He's incredibly smart, and like whatever game he turns his hand to, he just seems to win whatever he does. He's one of those people, just always winning everything he touches. And I met him in 2018, and I invited him to come and join me and demo the game at Essen. So we took Magnate to Essen in 2018, which was really, in hindsight, way too early. Like we should have maybe gone in 2019. To go in 2018 was so early, and really was a bit. I don't think it was really worth it in the end, but was a real experience exhibiting at Essen. Only 6 months into the industry, and he demoed Magnate very effectively, and he seemed to have loads of really good insights into the game as to what worked and what didn't work. So I said, well, why don't you join me as a bit of a developer, and we'll just see how it goes, and maybe you'll turn into, maybe it will work out, maybe, whatever. Just if you want to give it a go for a few months, see how it's like to develop the game. And he was brilliant. He was very good at jumping into my new shine, going, well, actually, hang on, wouldn't it be better if we did this rather than this? This is not this especially balanced because this strategy is probably a bit dominant if the game is like this. We should reprice this thing at 3 rather than 2 for these reasons. Like very good at those kind of minutiae of like laser like focus on how the game is coming together and how super players, or as it were, I guess, or like power players will play it and how they'll push it to its extreme. And for that reason, I then thought, well, why don't you just join me kind of more permanently? And he came on board to work with me in the company in general to help further what we were doing. And actually now, Jaya is the lead designer of our probably most ambitious title that we currently have in development. And I'm acting as developer on that game that way round.
You took now. Is it hard for you to switch from the designer to the developer cap?
I think
To go.
it's a really good question. I think I'm very fortunate that I can easily switch between the two. And actually, in some ways, I think I get even more out of being a developer than a designer. Because as the developer, and particularly in the kind of way that we work, I get a chance to really set the overall long-term vision and agree that what that's going to be. And then I just get, Jai goes away, does a whole load of brilliant design work, and I can just, discuss a couple of times a week with him to be like, right, well, actually, yeah, maybe change this bit, change that bit. Hang on, wouldn't it be better if this worked like this? I get to have this creative input for like a few hours a week and then see the thing develop. And I don't have to go away and do tons and tons and tons of work. And actually, that's pretty sweet because I get that involvement in the creative process. And in many ways, he's doing a lot of the heavy lifting of actually, going away and thinking, oh, designing it and thinking, oh, hang on, but I should do this. And of course, as a developer in that kind of role, you can have much, much, much more involvement in multiple projects. So, but we're always swapping roles. So, for example, on the upcoming new Snowdonia expansion, Jaya is the developer working with Tony. So his job is to constantly challenge Tony's ideas and go, well, hang on a minute, but weren't we doing this and that and giving him feedback at the same time I'm doing that to him on his game. So it's a really it's we deliberately swap hats, and what we do is for any project, one of us will be lead designer and the other one will be developer responding to the lead designer, and we find that really good way to sort of to spread out the workload. For another game, we've got 21X, which is designed by a very talented light game designer called Leo Sampson, this is going to be his first published game, but he's got so many really good, very compact, simple but brilliant designs. Liam Kirkman, who used to work for E Street Games, the company that we purchased, he now is the developer for Leo. So again, we just make sure those roles are always like well defined, and we find this is really good for producing really good games.
So you started to be a designer. You became a publisher out of need, and then you found, okay, I like this. I need to grow it.
Yeah.
How was this road for you?
Well, that's a good question. I am very much still on this road. I think that's the most important thing to say. And I don't know how far down it I am so far. I certainly compare us to other small startup companies, and I think we're doing really well. We got Magnate localized into German and Korean. And the second print run is going to be on its way quite shortly, which is great.
Any changes? Any changes, or just a second print run?
So it's very much a second print run. There are tiny little changes that we've made, and they are so small that I don't want to call it a second edition because there aren't any like substantive differences in terms of rules between them. What we've done is, for example, we have put a flyer in the top of the box that basically directs people to whether or not to use the tutorial. Because one of the big pieces of feedback we had is that we ended up with people that probably shouldn't really have been using the tutorial who ended up using it and then getting a bit annoyed with it because they thought it was a bit time consuming and a bit overly simplistic. And then some of the people who really probably should have used the tutorial, who were maybe less experienced gamers, were not using it. And then they were getting frustrated that we're making a few kind of conceptual mistakes. And I sort of thought, it's interesting. Magnet's obviously quite an interesting game because it's more of a kind of classically medium weight game, but it has a few mechanics that are maybe a bit unfamiliar to quite a lot of people in it. And so for that reason, I think in my view, it's a perfect subject matter for a tutorial because it helps you get over those conceptual humps better. And because the theme is quite accessible, we found that there are people who are less experienced gamers who will buy it. And it helps them kind of
yeah, yeah, yeah. Get into the everything. Um,
exactly. But
yeah.
you know, a super experienced gamer, who's someone who almost reads rule books for fun, isn't it's not going to be the right way for them to learn. And I think
No.
we didn't do enough of a good job of like, look, if you're this, go down this route. If you're this, go down this route. So
When I got it, I set aside those. I said I'm not interested. Give me the rule book.
yeah, well, you see, someone as experienced as you, totally the correct decision. So I think that was
Yeah,
absolutely the right thing to do.
you see, but that's a road.
Mm.
It's a road you're you're on. So I kind of interrupted you. So how do you feel this road, and what do you feel you need to do to go forward as a company?
So I think the big thing for us now, there's kind of like a few different avenues that I'm exploring at the moment in terms of what we do next. So I think one of the things that we're really good at, and I one of the biggest, I mean, it's painful, but it was brilliant learning, was the logistical side of things. So it's yet another area that, to be honest, maybe even fewer people in games like this bit. There are more people that like marketing in games than like logistics and international tax. So, but again,
Yeah,
it actually appeals to me. I quite enjoy that. I find the problem solving there quite interesting, and also it's all about systems really. It's about building as much as possible, automating, streamlining, turning things into a process. And that's one of my skills. That was really why that was a big part of my job before doing this. So we've sort of launched what we call Back Office by Naylor Games, which is really helping other publishers because this is something I think is a particular strength of ours and is a big part of our business now, is helping other companies get their goods shipped around the world, making sure that they sort out all their taxes, all that kind of thing, with the kind of vision of they just have to give us the contact details of their factory, and then from that point onwards, pretty much we can do everything else that gets the goods from the factory ultimately into customers' hands. So you know, to trade, to individuals, getting freight across borders, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of been a big part of it. And then the other part of it is about building out our own branded games, which are kind of part of our what I call forever games principle, which is the idea of making things that are have the same quality to them to someone that Railroad Tycoon had for me.
I see.
And it's something
Yep.
where I will never get rid of it. That's the dream of making games that you want to hold on forever, that are excellent, can stand the test of time, and always do something a bit unique. That means that, you know, maybe even 10, 20 years time, there'll still be people playing them. And I've sort of set as a studio as a goal that on our own branded games, the goal is to make a small number of very excellent things we really believe in, rather than like, right, we're a publisher now, let's just produce loads of great fun games. And the I think the reality of the market is now there are so many things coming out all the time that I think
Yeah.
increasingly that kind of let's just make loads of titles thing. I get why people want to do it because it's lovely to see people's creations get made and to be, and if you do enjoy the actual publishing process, it's enjoyable. But the problem is it's increasingly unsustainable. And so I figure, well, I don't want to add to those kind of things anyway. I only want to make things where people will be like, that people will treasure them. And I would rather take our time about it. And I definitely, for us, the pandemic slowed everything down. I think we probably lost about a year in terms of overall progress because of loads of things around not being able to work together as easily physically. A big thing for us was not being able to take games out on the campaign trail to conventions and get them really tested in the same way. And that limited us a little bit, and it meant that we weren't getting the feedback we needed to make really excellent things.
Yeah. Probably the pandemic slowed everybody.
Oh yeah,
So yeah.
and
Um,
I think we just felt it maybe a bit acutely because we were so early in our journey. It was like it felt like a whole year. It's quite a big difference when you've only been going around for 4 years.
yeah. Yeah. What I have a question for you,
Mm.
because I find it different for different people. What is fun to you?
Oh wow! Well, well. This is the problem, right? Is it's that can mean so many things. It's a word where sort of we almost deliberately don't use that word internally very much in a funny way because it's so broad. We try to push ourselves to describe the kind of fun more specifically that a game can provide us. I think for me, I think of more. what I get out of a game because I can think of all kinds of other kinds of fun that aren't necessarily related to games. The what I'm looking for in a game, I think, is drama is one thing. So for me, I like there to be a sense of stakes, of tension. If a game is just very kind of like, oh, there's a lot of optimization going on, and it's kind of intellectually stimulating and interesting, but you don't have it. There's no risk of like losing something. Then in a really like pronounced way, then I think that doesn't work as well for me. So personally, definitely drama is an important thing, and all those related things about tension. I'm definitely looking for something that generally is quite crunchy. I haven't got much of an appetite for light games that don't push my brain quite hard. I think if it's not pushing my brain hard, I'm just not interested. So even for example, with the simpler stuff we have, like let's take the extreme opposite end from the production side from Magnate, which would be 21X. It is a deck of 54 cards. That's it. I think I don't know how many I've worked out yet. It's something like 121Xs fit in the same space as Magnate or something, or at least 60 or something. It's different scale production size, but it's crunchy as hell because it's a math puzzle game where you've got these different formulas in front of you and you're trying to solve what the X value is that would make your cards worth 21, like blackjack. And so it's really pushes your head hard, even though there's just one problem going on where you're racing to do this, or choose to tactically stand on a lower number than 21 in order to force everyone else's hand, basically. That is a good example. Or Game Jam, which is something else that we're working on at the moment, which is a light card game about making games. And that one again, it's pretty crunchy. Like every turn really matters. You can't really make that many mistakes, and it's going to push your brain whatever you're doing. And even the end part of the game, which is like a party game where you have to pitch something to everyone else at the table, is like quite tough for a party game because you've got like four cards you have to synthesize into a story. And I think that's actually quite challenging the way that it's compared to some party games. So I think for me personally, fun is having my brain pushed quite hard, and it's about drama and tension, and there being real sense of stakes.
I see. And there are some principles which you can find in Magnate. Uh, so yeah. And
Definitely,
I have
definitely.
one more. What is your most played game?
Most played game. Ha, interesting. This presumably most played
Not
game
yours, not
that
playtesting,
I
not.
haven't designed because
Yeah,
unfortunately Magnate wins that one easily by virtue of monstrous amounts
yeah,
of
yeah.
playtesting and demoing. So I think if we're talking about games that I own, most played game is probably Railways of the World. Actually, even though because I've had it such a long time and it's such a perennial favorite for me, that would be one of my most played ever, I think.
And because you've talked about playtesting, um, how important do you find playtesting, and how much did you play this? I think this is good for a first time designer
Mm.
who will watch this, who might think he wants to publish, or maybe go through to this route as you went through. How much did you playtest Magnate? How many games of playtest were there?
So I think personally of games I played of Magnate, I didn't keep an exact log of all of them. I've got some set with some of the playtest notes as we started capturing them later on that the development went. But it's got to be 50 to 100 times.
Okay. And how many times was it played without you for other
Oh,
players? Other players.
well, another 50 at least because we also did a solo mode that we designed for it. And so Jaya played that so many times against the bot again and again and again. So, and actually, probably when you count all the demos we ran and that we were using observational
Of
feedback
course,
from,
yeah. That
I mean, maybe another 100. It could be as much as before the date. If you took everything up to the date before we sent the files to the manufacturer, where we were still correcting anything, where there were still any changes being made, I think you've got to be thinking it's another 150 times or so,
yep. So
at
yeah.
least.
Um. Okay. What is your favorite game? I think you told me this. It's Railways of the World, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, very much Rose the World. It has to be my favorite still. Even though there are loads of other things that I think I've discovered more recently that would come up there. I think another one, I mean, I try and think of like in terms of a top five. So, for example, for me, I think other ones would be, so there's things that I regularly play. One which I don't often think about as being a favorite, but it often is in there in terms of number of plays, is viticulture. I find it a sort of strangely tense but strangely restful worker placement game at two.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
just,
Yeah.
you know what I mean about it? It's like, it's interesting. It's like quite cutthroat in some ways where you're really like,
Because you have certain
what?
spaces which everybody wants.
Yeah, it's really like aggressively in terms of that, not just ordering, but like, oh, yeah, I'm not getting to do that this round. Okay. Really kind of quite head on. And yet
And
somehow
it's a
the whole,
race.
it's a race. It's a race as well. It's very tense. Again, it fits that kind of requirement for me. But somehow, I think the artwork, the theming of it, has this relaxed quality to it. That's quite because it's bucolic, rural scene. I think that somehow that I love that contrast in the gameplay. So for me, that would be one. Another one would be Eon's End.
Aeon's End.
Jaya and I played that about 60, 70 times over the lockdown and was brilliant. I found that the ability to the deck building puzzle of that really interesting, and in terms of how it interfaces with different nemesis and a shop evolving over time. The legacy one, the first legacy one anyway, in particular, was brilliant. That would be another really big favorite for me. I'm in general a big fan of co-ops. So I've always wanted to design a co-op. So one of the reasons why NG6 is so exciting, that this is Jaya's design. That's just a code name, by the way. Is that it's a co-op, but a real-time dungeon crawling co-op.
I see.
But it's like a heavy real-time game. So it's
Okay.
that is just, yeah. And again, I love co-op games as well.
What who is your favorite designer?
Oh, wow, that is a tough question. Well, I think part of me wants to say Martin Wallace just because it's an easy one because of Railway of the World.
But it's one game.
It's one game,
Yes.
but also, for example, probably would be in my top 10 would be Brass as well.
Yep.
So probably for me that he's another one where he succeeds there. I think in terms of other designers that really impress me in terms of, as in, I like all their work. Is it one that I think is I don't actually necessarily like all of his work, but he just impresses me so much. Is it Wolfgang Wasch?
Wolfgang Wars, yeah.
So it blows my mind that
Quacks
the same.
of Quedlinburg.
Well, but the same guy that could do Quacks could also do the Mind.
And Taverns of Tiefenthal. It's quite an interesting game.
Yeah, and I think he's really interesting. In terms of other designers where I'm like regularly playing their work, and I think it's quite impressive. I think what's so interesting about some of my favorite games, if you take, for example, like Eon's End, is it? Oh, I'm just gonna completely get the name wrong. The guy who designed that, for example, that really is the thing he's most famous for. So there are quite a lot of games where, and while I really love viticulture, I'm not as wild about Jamie Stegmaier's other games, for example. So I think on the business side and the kind of product side, I think he's a genius. I think he might be the single most impressive person working in board game publishing. But I at his games just don't always
stick
as a designer. Yeah, they're just not really my
cup of tea.
They don't not my cup of tea. Exactly, because you've played Magnate a lot, so you know how much things that maybe other people wouldn't like in games about like these ridiculous high tension moments where maybe something's going to be decided by a card being turned over. That's my idea of fun. I think a lot of people who maybe like his games would think, oh no, that's a bit random having that sort of stuff happen. And I'm like,
that's why you like viticulture, because you will it has that random aspect of it, probably.
Yeah, totally.
Completely. And in the end of this part of the interview, I would like to ask you if you want to say something which I might not have asked you, something which you want to say.
Oh wow. I'm trying to think about anything else that I've not thought of. Well, tell you what I won't. It's nothing that you haven't asked me, but I want to return to the question of playtesting and the belief about how important it is. I think just very briefly, because if there are people who are listening, who are designers, it is just one of those things where I think what people are right when they say that you need to just keep playtesting things as much as you humanly can, and specifically, I would add playtesting with lots of different people because one of the big challenges of games when you come up with something new, especially if you're trying to make something that's quite innovative, that is a bit different to what's come before, it's going to be a really big part of it. It's going to be working out what people actually enjoy it, and that you might find some people you play test it doesn't go very well, and you're thinking, oh no, is the game bad? And it's not the game is bad. It's actually just it's the wrong people playing it. And I think finding out why a game works for some people is actually just as important as making it better because to some extent those questions are interlinked. So I think that's something I would just give as advice, and I think I just wanted to say about playtesting that I think is just an important thing to bear in mind.
Well, thank you for that. And now I have a set of questions of a small questionnaire, which I stole blatantly from James Lipton, who stole it also from a French presenter.
Okay.
Who distilled it from Proust questionnaire. Proust Marcel Proust questionnaire it's a
Oh.
two. There are two questionnaires. Questionnaire which you should ask yourself at a certain age of two different in two different times of your life. One when you are younger, and one when you are a bit older.
Mm.
And the questionnaire with which Bernard Pivot made, and when James, probably you know who James Lipton is. You have an idea?
Oh, the name sounds familiar.
He was a presenter. He did the Inside That Actor Studio,
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
and yeah, the questionnaire is starts with, "What's your favorite word?"
Oh, wow. My favorite word. At the moment, one of my favorite words is I think is discombobulate.
What does that mean?
So to discombobulate is to sort of throw out of sorts, to sort of to put into disarray, to sort of disorganize, and it's often used to describe it if like you've heard something that's made you feel a bit uneasy or like thrown you off your step somehow. And I think it's quite good to be like to be I heard this thing and it made me feel discombobulated. And I'm not sure about the origin, but that's only how I use it. So, and it's just a great sounding word as well.
What's your least favorite word?
Oh, least favorite word. That's much more difficult. Hmm. That's a really tough one. Thinking about least favorite word. It's probably a word that just doesn't sound great to me. For some reason, the one that came to mind was pak choi, and I don't know why, because I think that's a kind of cabbage, isn't
I
it?
don't know what's that.
But it's a kind of like yeah, and I don't know why that particularly. No idea why that word would be one. I think it's probably because it makes me think a little bit of, even though this is not the right word, it's just what came to mind from word association. It makes me think a little bit of pad thai. That's it, which is the Thai dish that often has peanuts in it. And because I'm allergic to peanuts, I think just the sound of that makes me go, "Oh no, that sounds like that other thing that I've got an allergy to." Which is a pity because so much of Thai food is really nice. I'm just allergic to it.
I
So yeah, off the top of my head, in terms of things I have negative reactions to, yeah, I generally don't have strong feelings about most words, to be honest.
What turns you on creatively, emotionally, or spiritually?
Oh, these are really good questions. I can see why they've been stolen frequently. I think new projects. I think this probably doesn't make me very unusual, but any opportunity to have something which is a new project, a new undertaking where we're going to launch something exciting. And I think sometimes this is to my detriment because it means that we have like a lot of different things going on at Naylor Games, and sometimes I'm like, right, we need to focus a bit more than this. And I always have to be tough with myself to be like, no, we're not taking any new games, we're not taking any of these new projects. We're going to focus on what we have because when you launch have a new idea and you start doing it and you start building it and being involved in those early stages of execution, that's always just really exciting. So I think that would be my answer to that one.
What turns you off?
Turns me off in that sense. I think um I think people's interestingly on the same theme, people's negativity about what can be achieved. And I think, particularly in Britain as a country, we have lots of virtues, but I think one of our vices is that we tend to be very negative about a lot of things. And the moment something's succeeding, we're kind of wanting it to fail because we're like, well, it can't really succeed. And we're so like always supportive of the underdog in any situation. The moment anything starts becoming successful, we kind of want to tear it down a little bit. And I find that a very dreary and frustrating attitude. So, I think that negativity about what can be done, it's so toxic, and I think that's definitely a big turn off for me.
What is your favorite curse word?
Oh, my favorite curse word. I think maybe fucksticks because I think that it has a whimsical quality to it, as well as being it's something you can say, but it's difficult to say it in too threatening a manner because it's inherently sounds a bit silly. So I think for me, that would be yeah, that would be my favorite.
What sound or noise do you love?
Oh, what sound or noise do I love? I think I've come to love the sound of my coffee machine. I think it makes a kind of it makes a makes first it makes a slightly too loud grinding noise. It's like and then there's like a pause. It goes as it starts pouring out the coffee. And I think that last bit is I'm about to get my amazing caffeine hit. So by pure kind of Pavlovian conditioning,
Exactly.
it's probably that, to
Yeah,
be
it's
honest.
association. It's the association.
Yes, it's really straightforward. I was thinking the other one would be like the sound of the sea with the waves crashing, and I do like that. But the one that's very immediate to me would be the coffee machine. More like it probably tells you how much more how little I go to the sea versus drinking coffee.
Yeah. What sound or noise do you hate?
What noise or sound do I hate? Um, hmm. Oh, I know what I really hate. It's kind of contextual. It's when people use car horns to signal people. To like they're trying to get the attention of someone on the pavement or a friend of theirs or something who's like because they need wanting them to hurry up or something and they beep and you're like walking nearby and you hear this meh like, what was that suddenly this is like a sudden sound and they're using it really lazily not even for like what its intended purposes and I think for that reason I hate that suddenly it's like suddenly whatever reverie you've been in you're suddenly rudely taken out of by someone who's just not thinking about anyone else so for me that would be that sound of a sudden car horn in an appropriate environment.
Which profession, outside the one you already have or do, would you like to attempt?
Oh, I think maybe a priest. I think maybe a priest. I think I'd be a really good vicar in the Church of England. And I've always thought that maybe when I'm like 65 or something, if I could move into that, I would consider doing that.
Uh,
That or a psychotherapist would be the other thing that I think I'd be quite interested in doing.
um, what profession, which you already, which you outside the one you already do, would you not like to attempt?
Oh, okay. I kind of feel like there are loads of those. like so many of those. So I need to think about which one would be the one that I would least like to do. So it's difficult because I actually think most jobs I would do. It's going to be something really simple, and that's just because I have a very, very sensitive nose. I have quite a fine sense of smell. So I used to do as a bit of a party trick. I used to identify wines blind because I used to be very good at that back when I worked as a wine merchant. And I think that probably being a bin man or working in like
Sewage.
sewage, for example, both of those would be I see them as noble work that keeps our society moving. But I just think I would just find the smell all the time horrible,
But
and for that reason, I that would be the reason. That would be as well as it being very physical work, which actually I don't mind. I quite like physical work, and but although it's very tough work, I particularly wouldn't want
you're
that.
not that
I think
noble.
no, I'm not noble enough for that. I will leave that to more noble people to do that.
You don't have enough blue blood.
Yes, exactly. Or too much blue blood. I don't know. Blue
Blue.
collar blood. Are you thinking? I don't know. But certainly, no. I'm not. Not enough for. No, 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 no. I don't think that one's for me. That job.
If and now the last question, which is the trickiest one.
Mm.
If heaven exists, what did you expect God to say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I don't know. Put my hand on my shoulder and say, "Don't worry, you made it." I feel like, or "Don't worry, it's over now." Something like that. Uh, I think it's an interesting one. That's a really interesting question. Yeah, I don't know what I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea beyond that.
Well, sir, thank you for coming on. Thank you for accepting to go through my questions. To to put yourself through this um, hard hard line of questioning.
Yes.
I hope you had fun. I hope you felt good on our virtual gaming room in these virtual comfortable chairs. I hope.
Yes, yes, it was great. It was you had some absolutely brilliant
Uh,
questions. Very enjoyable.
and I want to say that I'm eagerly waiting for that Snowdonia expansion which you are working on, and whatever you are working on next, I hope it will surpass the level of Magnate. And yeah,
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Well, I hopefully we can. Hopefully, I'm very hopeful that it will certainly at least meet your expectations. And that when you get a chance to play it, I think it's certainly got a huge amount going for it. I'm very excited by working with Tony on this. It's been brilliant because obviously I'm a bit jealous of Jaya because he gets to work with Tony more than I do, and I work with him more on the kind of marketing side and the overall vision for the game. But it is, yeah, I'm just be so excited by that and on everything that we're doing as well. So yeah, looking forward to sharing some of that with you in the future.
thank you, Radu. Yeah, apparently me and James have some things in common. Me being a film director, for me film is still an ongoing thing, and I do hope to make more films in this life. Thank you for staying with us. He said that it's a great interview, and he thanks us
Oh,
for the
thank
chat.
you. Thank you so
Uh,
much.
so I hope we can meet again somewhere. Maybe if you come to Romania, maybe if I come to the good old UK.
Yeah, absolutely. I would. That sounds great. I'd very much like that.
And somewhere in the middle, probably in Essen next year, probably. Who knows where?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was
Totally.
fun talking to you. Thank you again for coming on.
You're more than welcome. It was a delight.
And please don't hang up the call. We'll talk a bit before we after I finish this. As always, thank you. I want to thank again James for coming on. I want to thank everybody who came and watched live. I want to thank everybody who will come and watch after the fact. If you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, if you have comments, leave them there in the comments section, and I will reply to as many as they are. And well, if you like these, like I said, thumbs up because it helps. Also subscribe because subscribers apparently matter. So until next time, which will be tomorrow night with a playthrough for Unconscious Mind with all the changes, and I hope you'll enjoy that. Until next time, all I can say is here. Play a lot. This is what it says in Romanian, but I'll translate it. Play a lot, play loads, as you Brits say. Have fun, and until next time, bye-bye, fine folks, wherever in the world you are.